Kwiatkowski was an insider, a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force and a former employee of both the National Security Agency and the Pentagon. But in recent years, she's been writing against the policies and the wars that the U.S. government has undertaken. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, my first question is, the U.S. seems to be getting deeper and deeper into this war in Afghanistan. And in your opinion, do you think it really can be won?
There's not been any clear definition given politically for what a victory in Afghanistan would look like. We've talked about peace and good things, a formal government of some sort, but none of this really is winning in the sense that Americans understand winning. So it probably can't be won in an American sense of winning, and so no, it can't be won. That doesn't stop them from talking about a victory in Afghanistan.
But do we have a way out? I mean, what's to be done at this point?
Well, there is a solution to Afghanistan, to our problem in Afghanistan, and that is to bring the troops home, to basically declare victory, okay, since it's undefined anyway, and bring the troops home. We're not going to do that. The intention is that, and Obama has kind of hinted at this, that we're going to be in Afghanistan for quite a long time. All this, of course, without defining why we are in Afghanistan. This leads me, as a former military person and just as a regular citizen, to wonder what it is we're really trying to achieve in Afghanistan. It seems to me that it's not for the Afghan people, it's not for democracy or any of those things. It is to have a strategic military footprint in the Middle East that complements the strategic military footprint that we've already gained by occupying Iraq and building a huge number of bases. Of course, sometimes we talk about the bases we've built in Iraq. Well, we've built for even a longer time an extensive array of bases, military bases and air bases in Afghanistan. So that's probably why we're there. We're there for strategic military emplacement reasons. Now, what are we strategically doing militarily? Well, we're focusing on a third country that we haven't yet mentioned, Iran. So clearly, whether Obama is thinking this through on his own or if he's getting his marching orders from the establishment or the status quo, he's going to stay in Afghanistan. He's going to stay in Iraq with the aim of surrounding, encompassing, leveraging whatever it is that he might want from Iran.
But Obama has, however, announced and made the plans for withdrawing troops from Iraq. Do you think that that is at least some kind of a step forward?
I think from the position of people that voted for Obama, promising to bring the troops home from Iraq, which was something that was much more easily understood by Americans. We had gone there to topple Saddam Hussein. Of course, that was done years ago. Most Americans have lost patience with Iraq, so they wanted the troops to come home. I think Obama has done nothing more than make a gesture, and in fact, those troops are not coming home. It was very clear from the beginning that he was simply shifting troops from Iraq, some of whom are on their third and fourth tours of duty, into an even hotter spot of the civil war and occupation in Afghanistan. It's very upsetting that Obama would play his supporters like that.
So then I'd like to get your opinion on President Barack Obama. Do you think that he isn't really the change that he promised everyone he would be?
Well, on foreign policy, he represents, as far as I can tell, no change. We had, I think George W. Bush's image abroad was one of vicious naivete. They didn't expect him to understand or care about the interest of other countries, and he was warlike. So these are the characteristics of George W. Bush. I think after 6-7 years of war, people are sick of that, so they changed him out for someone who promised change. But in fact, if you look at the 6 months of Barack Obama's presidency, while his demeanor is much more cooperative and charming, you could say, he's very different from George Bush. He's a little bit more eloquent than George Bush, so you have these things. But in fact, his actions are a continuation of the Bush-Cheney foreign policy. It's very scary to me. It makes you wonder if he was just lying, as many candidates must do in order to get elected, or if he actually believes in what he's doing. It would be nice to see change in the form of a new respect for the Constitution. As I recall, Obama and this should have been revealing, never really talked about the Constitution in his campaign. He talked about change, but there was no real backbone to that change, no structural legal framework for change. And so what we got is no change. We got the status quo, a continuation with a different face.
What are the chances, do you think, of real change, of a real fresh face coming onto the U.S. political scene if Obama is in fact not that change candidate that he promised to be?
I really honestly believe that the leadership of the federal government of the United States will continue to be from one of the major two parties, and those major two parties, Republicans or Democrats, have identical, very statist views, both domestically and imperial views when it comes to America's role in the world. I don't see any change coming from that. Too much is invested in the status quo. Reduce the size of our military. Are we really going to take those contractors, of which we have hundreds of thousands working in Iraq? Many of them are American, about half are American contractors. Are we going to bring those guys home and say, no more war, go back to Alabama, find a job? Are we going to do that in a time of 10% unemployment? No. No president in his right mind is going to do that. So we have, in this country, in the United States, we have gotten ourselves in a position where the only thing we export and the only thing we truly produce relates to war. Okay, that's where the jobs are. So I think what will cause change is real collapse, and that may come if the dollar as a reserve currency is eliminated, if the Chinese and others stop buying our debt, stop subsidizing the growth of our federal government, stop subsidizing our wars, because don't think the American taxpayer is paying for the war in Iraq. We're borrowing that money from other countries. When those countries are tired of it and are not getting the return and stop believing in our currency and our system, then the government will collapse. Of course, America will go on. America will be here, and the people that make up America will be here. And hopefully we'll rediscover the Constitution. But I don't see any of that happening through an electoral process.
But what do you think the chances are to break into this two-party mold here in the United States? And how could the Libertarian Party or any other third party really break through?
When good ideas are brought forth into the national conversation, they are typically hijacked by one of the two parties. It really seems to be structurally no chance that a third party will be able to retain its good ideas. Ideas are kind of free. You know, if it's a good idea and I see that you have a good idea, I'm free to adopt some of those the ways of thinking. And so the two major parties do that. Our electoral college system, of course, which narrows it down to winner take all. And that means you're going to have two parties, and that those two parties fight over the center.
Also, what role do you think the media has to play in this? Because the mainstream media also supports this two-party system.
Yes.
And so would perhaps a more independent media help the rise of independent parties?
It would be nice to think that we could have independent media, but I don't see how when we have such a large tentacles of government kind of manipulating just about everything. And again, this is what is refreshing about an idea of constitutional government. You know, most of what our government is doing is unconstitutional. It's extra-constitutional. It's beyond the scope of what it should be doing. If it was doing much, much less, our news media would actually be going to get news from people that are making the news. One-issue people. Not to the president on everything. I mean, you know, it's kind of sad. You know, the government is everything to the media, and so that's where it goes to feed. It's kind of sad. I'd like to see independent media. I don't see how you can honestly have it without a drastic reduction in the size and scope of the American federal government.
You were yourself a vice presidential candidate in the 2008 elections for the Libertarian Party. Do you have any future political plans?
I don't really see politics as the way for real change. I think even the best qualified or good candidates, honest candidates, are really, for the most part, going to be sucked into a system, chewed up and spit out. I would like to help in my writing and in my studies, try to help people think outside of the propaganda box that we are living in this country. What are real alternatives? Because the future we're on now, the track we're on now, is one of empire. It always ends the same way. Okay? You go broke, you collapse, and there's misery for everyone. We don't want that. It would be much nicer to recognize the bad path, pull back, voluntarily eliminate our empire, okay, and go back to being a productive, limited government republic. This is what we say we love the founders. Well, this is what they wanted for us. I'd like to find new ways to think about going back to that, but not through politics. I don't see politics as being the answer.
Well, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.